during that time, particularly August, September 1914, there was an enormous economic dislocation, not because anybody ordered factories to be closed, but just because panic swept around the world. And in the absence of open stock markets and in conditions of great uncertainty, a lot of businesses did shut down. But there's a big difference between a pandemic and a war. A war solves its own economic problem by enlisting over time the able-bodied men, placing orders for munitions from the major industrial concerns. And so by 1915, the unemployment that had featured in the immediate aftermath of the outbreak of war was gone. A pandemic's not like that. There isn't the same demand for employment or manufacturing. Sure, we need vaccines, we need testing, but that's not going to create the kind of jobs that are desperately needed now. In any case, what we've done was more than just a panic. We had a state-mandated economic lockdown in some of the most important economies in the world, New York State and California State in particular. And I think that future historians will say this was a mistake, that we thought we had to copy the Chinese in what they had done in Hubei, which was to shut down the entire province, lock down the economy, and lock people in their apartments. I think we drew completely the wrong lesson from Asia because we were looking at the wrong China. If we'd looked at Taiwan, we'd have seen that the correct response to this kind of a pandemic is to ramp up testing and contact tracing and leverage not only the traditional mechanisms of social distancing that are appropriate in a pandemic, but the new methods that technology make possible, like digital contact tracing. We didn't do that. We failed completely to learn from the Taiwanese or indeed the South Korean example. And I think we could have achieved the containment of the virus through those methods at a far lower cost than we are now paying for having essentially closed down economic activity in an indiscriminate way. Moreover, just to add one final point, we've sought to offset the shock that we've imposed on ourselves with unprecedented, at least in peacetime, monetary and fiscal measures. And while you could argue that they were a reasonable thing to do for a short-term shutdown, I don't think we are actually in a position to do this just for the short term, because I don't think we're going to get a V-shaped recovery that will allow us rapidly to normalize monetary and fiscal policy. And so I think we've created a whole boatload of problems for the future by allowing all monetary and fiscal discipline to be thrown out the window. This phrase, whatever it takes, has become a cover for extraordinarily reckless measures, which will have many unintended consequences. So I actually give us low grades, both for the supply side shock, which didn't need to be this big, and for the compensating monetary and fiscal measures, which I'm sure will have unintended negative consequences. It's really a pretty shocking combination when you think about it. And what makes me angry is that it didn't need to be this way, because if we really paid attention to how to handle a pandemic smartly, if we'd learnt from Taiwan, South Korea, if we'd had the right procedures in place rather than the ones that failed, then we wouldn't really have needed to do the lockdown. There's been no lockdown in Taiwan at any point. And they have a minimal number of cases and a minimal number of deaths. And guess what? They're right next to the People's Republic of China. They were as exposed as anybody to the risk. So our failure to come anywhere close to that kind of performance is deeply, deeply disturbing to me.